Straight from the source tonight, he will not be intimidated. A fiery attorney general slamming what he says are unprecedented attacks, fed up with Republican smears and lies about the Department of Justice and Donald Trump. Former FBI Director James Comey will join me live. And a dramatic election year action on the border. President Biden imposing sweeping new restrictions that take effect at midnight tonight. But some Democrats say he's taking a page out of Donald Trump's immigration playbook. And believe it or not, it's actually primary night here in America. We are awaiting calls at any time now on critical races. I'm Caitlin Collins, and this is The Source. And CNN can now project that Congressman Rob Menendez Jr. will survive his primary challenge in New Jersey's 8th congressional district, fending off fellow Democrat Robbie Bala. Also fending off backlash against his own father, Senator Bob Menendez, who is on trial right now for federal bribery charges. CNN's senior political data reporter, Harry Enton, joins us now. And Harry, I mean, obviously, this was kind of seen as a test of this dynasty and of the Menendez family that we're seeing play out. What happened tonight?
I think what happened was you're dealing with a majority Hispanic district in which the Menendez name, although perhaps tarnished because of the father. Look, Bob Menendez was mayor in Union City before either you or I were born. It's a name that goes back generations. And the fact is, this was a very highly fought contest with a lot of money being spent. But at the end of the day, Rob Menendez was not tainted by his father, or at least not nearly enough to cause a defeat. I mean, that's quite a margin right there. It's much wider margin than I actually expected.
Well, and we're both obviously incredibly young, so thank you for highlighting that. Tonight is the first Republican primary since Donald Trump became a convicted felon last Thursday. One thing that I have been fascinated by is when Nikki Haley, who's obviously not in this race anymore, hasn't been for months, is still getting sizable portions of the vote in certain states. She's on the ballot in New Mexico tonight. What are we seeing there? What are we expecting?
Yeah, if you look right now in returns, Nikki Haley's getting a little bit less than 10% of the vote, right? In some states like Maryland along the Acela corridor, she's been doing significantly better. Outside of the Acela corridor, those places that don't have those major cities, she hasn't been doing nearly as well. But, I'm so interested in the Nikki Haley vote because if you look generally speaking, those voters who are casting their ballots for Nikki Haley, they have less than a 20% favorable rating of Donald Trump, less than a 20% favorable rating of Joe Biden. Those are the voters who ultimately may decide this election going forward.
Yeah, and Trump has said he's confident they'll come his direction, though he hasn't really made any appeals to them. But before we go, I like your skeptical face there. Montana, the Senate primary there is really fascinating. I mean, as we're watching who is going to control the Senate, which party at the end of this election, obviously the incumbent senator there, we're seeing Jon Tester go up against his primary challenger. But what do we make of how it's looking in the state as we've seen how Tester has kind of carefully navigated the politics?
Let me make a declaration here. If Jon Tester does not win re-election, Democrats will not control the United States Senate. So this is a very key race because we already know that Democrats are very, very likely to lose in West Virginia. If they lose in Montana, too, bye-bye to that majority.
Harry Enton, always with the wise advice and the numbers. I know you'll continue watching them tonight. Thank you so much for that. Obviously, we will be tracking all of these primary races very closely, including what's happening in Montana and whether or not Nikki Haley, her vote increase does go up and what that means for Republicans. Thank you for joining us. CNN Newsnight with Abby Phillip starts now.
As of tonight, our next guest, Montana's Democratic Senator Jon Tester, knows what he's up against in his re-election campaign. Money. A lot of money. Polls closed at 10 p.m. Eastern Time in Montana tonight, and the expected winner of the Republican nomination for Senate in Montana is one of the richest people in Montana. Jon Tester's Republican opponent is Tim Sheehy, who grew up in the neighboring state of Minnesota in a multi-million-dollar lake house and has enough wealth to live and work part-time in Montana. Tim Sheehy has never run for office before this Senate campaign. The Montana Senate race is one of several closely watched Senate races this year that could give Republicans control of the United States Senate next year. Yesterday, Tim Sheehy began running campaign ads trying to tie Senator Jon Tester to something that happened over 2,000 miles away from Montana last week. the 34 felony convictions earned by Donald Trump in a Manhattan courtroom. Today, John Tester's campaign responded with an ad about Montana, not Manhattan.
Montana veterans know
John Tester stands up for us,
holding the VA accountable
to get the care and benefits that we have earned.
John delivered 12 new veterans clinics
Across Montana.
and expanded mental health.
Passed the PACT Act so veterans with toxic exposure
Finally get the care we need.
I'm John Tester, and I approve this message to always stand with Montana's heroes.
Veterans across Montana.
Joining us now is Montana's senior Senator John Tester. NBC News is projecting that he has won Montana's Democratic primary to seek re-election to the United States Senate. Senator, congratulations on your victory. I'm not surprised in that you're holding on to that nomination. But now you know you're up against some pretty heavy money on the other side, someone who can finance this, just reach into his own pocket when he needs money for this campaign.
Look, Lawrence, you know this, but maybe your viewers don't. I'm a third-generation Montanan. My wife, Charlotte, and I have the incredible opportunity to farm the land that my grandparents homesteaded, that my folks ran from the 40s to the 70s, and we took over in 1978. I lived within 100 miles of where I was born my entire life until I got this job. And I will tell you that this campaign is not about anything other else than Montana values. Folks are trying to change Montana. They're trying to buy Montana. They're trying to change it into a playground for the rich. Montana is the greatest state and the greatest country that's ever existed because Montana, a handshake means something. Your word is your bond. We got two ears and one mouth, and we act accordingly. We get the facts, and we make decisions off of those. And so you're right. There's going to be a lot of money put into this race trying to make me something that I'm not, so that they can run against that person because they know they can't beat the John Tester, who's the third-generation farmer from Big Sandy, Montana. We will push back. We will tell the truth. We will talk about my record of accomplishment in the United States Senate during my tenure, and we'll talk about my vision for this country moving forward, whether it's making sure we live up to the promise to our veterans or making sure that we're doing everything we can do to get everybody connected to broadband across this country, including rural and frontier areas of Montana. So look, the game plan has been the same for every election I've been in, Lawrence. They try to make me into something I'm not so they can run against that person. The bottom line is I listen to Montanans. They're my boss. I take their good ideas back to Washington, D.C., and I get them put into law. And it's why I've been told and over again that I'm one of the most effective senators in the United States Senate and one of the most bipartisan senators in the United States Senate. So I look forward to this campaign. I know there's going to be a lot of money out there. This race is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, which is insane in its own right. But in the end, this is a race against John Tester, a third-generation farmer, and a guy that just moved to Montana. And quite frankly, I've got a lot of equipment that I've owned longer than he's been in the state of Montana. And to be able to have those values, those Montana values, and know what Montana needs and know what Montana makes Montana tick is going to be critically important moving forward for the greatest state and the greatest country that's ever existed.
As you've been speaking, Senator, NBC News has moved Tim Sheehy into the projected winner category. He's got the check mark now, 75% of the vote as of right now. Senator, in reading about the race, I have read that some people say you're coming to the end of your third term. That's 18 years in the Senate, and I've read from some Montana voters who say they've voted for you in the past that they think you've drifted away into the Washington world and you're not the guy they voted for in the past. What do you say to those voters?
I'd say the forefathers had it right. They believed in a citizen legislature, and that's why I've continued to farm while I've had this job. I've actually had two jobs. One of them is trying to feed the world through production agriculture on our family farm, and the other is crafting good policy that helps make Montana remain in the position it is, which is the last best place. And that's all I can tell folks is that I go home every weekend. We meet with Montanans. I drive a little tractor, combine, depending on what season of the year it is. And if the work doesn't get done on the farm, that means I didn't do it. And so consequently, it's really hard to turn into a Washingtonian when, in fact, I'm writing the checks for diesel we're buying. I'm writing the checks for the equipment we're buying. And quite honestly, making the decisions on when we plant and when we harvest.
Yeah, Senator, I think, I don't know a Washingtonian who thinks you're a Washingtonian. That's for sure. You won't be able to find someone saying that.
Like I said, Lawrence, they're going to try to make me into something I'm not so they can run against that person. They don't want to run against John Tester, the third-generation Montana farmer who has a great record of accomplishment in the United States Senate.
Senator, what is your agenda for your next term in the Senate? What do you want to go back there to do?
Well, look, we've done a lot of good things for the veterans, as that ad pointed out. We've done some amazing work with clinics and making sure that toxic exposed veterans who have never been taken care of in this country now are getting the benefits and the health care that they've earned. That doesn't mean we're done with the VA. We've still got a lot of things to do in the VA, make sure we got enough mental health care professionals in the VA, making sure we've got enough doctors, particularly in rural areas of this country and rural areas of Montana, to make sure we're helping our veterans. Look, Montana is the second highest per capita of veterans in the country. We got people who like to serve and they're honored by their service. We need to make sure we've got their back. You move that forward, and then we've got some things to do in conservation that is really, really important. And I'm not just talking about one thing, wilderness or recreation. I'm talking about all the above. Making sure that we're harvesting trees, making sure that we're putting land aside for our kids, for future generations, and making sure that people can recreate on our public lands and keep those public lands in public hands, because it's one of the things that helps drive our economy in our great state.
Montana Senator John Tester, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
One thing, and I'll be remiss if I don't say it, please go to johntester.com and help me out.
You got it. Thank you very much, Senator.
You betcha.
And coming up, it's primary day in New Jersey today. We will be joined by the Democrat who is going to run for Senate now as the Democratic nominee for Senate. Andy Kim, the big winner in New Jersey tonight, will join us next. Criminal defendant Robert Menendez is a United States Senator today, thanks to a hung jury. He was defendant Menendez in 2017 when he went on trial in federal court for bribery. But when he got a hung jury, the leaders of the New Jersey Democratic Party and Democrats in the United States Senate immediately embraced Bob Menendez as if nothing happened and endorsed his reelection to the Senate as if everything was okay. Senator Menendez received a public letter of admonition from the Senate Ethics Committee for the conduct that got him indicted. It surely read like he should have been expelled from the Senate. But still, professional Democrats cheered him on. Yesterday, during his second criminal trial in federal court, defendant Menendez had his nominating petition delivered to the New Jersey election officials so that he can be on the ballot in November as an independent running for re-election to the Senate in New Jersey. Robert Menendez needed to find at least 800 people among New Jersey's 9 million people to sign his petitions to be on the ballot as an independent. His filing showed 2,465 signatures, and so Donald Trump might not be the only convicted felon on the ballot in New Jersey in November. Congressman Andy Kim was the first New Jersey Democrat to call for Robert Menendez to resign from the Senate when Menendez was indicted, this time after the FBI found $480,000 in cash, along with some gold bars, in Robert Menendez's home last year. Soon, a majority of Democratic senators asked Robert Menendez to resign. Tonight is election night in New Jersey, where Andy Kim won the Democratic nomination for United States Senate.
Government works great for big corporations and special interests, so we need a senator who works for us. Andy Kim worked for President Obama, then went to Congress to clean up Washington. He took on pharmaceutical companies to make health care more affordable, and Andy wrote a new bill to stop politicians from trading stocks and using their power to get rich. Washington works for them. Andy Kim works for us.
I'm Andy Kim, and I approve this message.
Joining us now in the winner's circle, Democratic Congressman Andy Kim of New Jersey. He won tonight the Democratic nomination for United States Senate in New Jersey. Congressman Kim, thank you very much for joining us tonight. What is the #1 issue for you going forward in the campaign for November?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. We're very excited today on this primary night. I mean, look, the top thing on people's minds is about, their own challenges, whether that's high cost of living and the difficulties of housing, healthcare, hunger, other issues that are out there. But the other thing that we're really trying to hit home is that why is it that we don't have a government, a Congress that's able to be able to deliver and fix that? And that's where we see so many of the broken problems that are out there. We live in the time of the greatest amount of distrust in government in modern American history. So people are connecting those dots that the government is not functioning in the way that it needs to address their problems. So that's what we're talking about here in New Jersey.
We also have a Republican nominee tonight. Curtis Bashaw won the Republican nomination in New Jersey. He was not the Trump-endorsed candidate. The Trump-endorsed candidate came in second. What does that tell us about the dynamics of this race going forward?
Well, look, he is someone that has stepped up and endorsed Trump, though. So Curtis Bashaw has endorsed Trump. I'm sure he voted for Trump tonight. So it's kind of like Ted Cruz, someone who accepts all this abuse from Donald Trump, but then still votes for him. And it's really just something that, honestly, it really shows a lack of character. So, I think this is a situation where I'm stepping up right now. I'm running against both an indicted sitting senator as well as someone whose first action in politics is to endorse a convicted felon. And I think that that's the dynamics of this race here in New Jersey that I'm facing for the general election in November.
Are you concerned that Robert Menendez on the ballot could take votes away from the Democratic nominee, from you, in this election?
Well, this being my fourth race as a Democrat that won a district Trump won twice. In 2020, I was one of only 7 Democrats in the country to win a district Trump won. I outperformed Joe Biden by 8 points that year. So I don't take anything for granted. And right now, I mean, look, this is a difficult political climate. It's unpredictable, unstable. So I'm going to do everything that I can to be able to mobilize. And I hope people are supportive of my efforts to try to help keep the Senate majority. And if they are, I ask that they go to andykim.com and help us out.
What is at stake for people of New Jersey in keeping a Democratic Senate majority, not letting the Republicans control the Senate?
Well, honestly, it's something that people here think about a lot because, this is what's standing between us and preventing the Republicans from pushing a national abortion ban, about pushing their extremism. I'm currently in the House of Representatives. I'm dealing with the most extreme and radical Speaker of the House in American history. So I know exactly what it would look like if we're dealing with that in the Senate. I served under the first 2 years of my time in Congress. Mitch McConnell was leading up the Senate. So we know what that plan is looking like. And that's why we need to make sure we're stepping up against it. I voted to impeach Donald Trump twice. We don't want him back into the White House, but we also need to make sure that we are controlling Senate and making sure we have the ability to be able to vote on and control who's going into the Supreme Court at a time when people are very worried about what comes next when it comes to women's reproductive rights, when it comes to LGBTQ rights, immigration, amongst so many other issues. So people here in New Jersey recognize what's at stake, and I think that's why they mobilized so much today to be able to come on out for this primary.
Congressman Andy Kim of New Jersey, campaigning to become Senator Kim, thank you very much for joining us on this night when you've won the nomination.
Thanks for having me today.
Tonight's Last Word is next.
Good evening, I'm John Glasgow. Polls are now officially closed in New Jersey. Newsmax projecting former President Trump as the winner in the Garden State after that record-shattering rally in Wildwood a few weeks ago. Newsmax also projects President Biden as the winner in New Jersey. Take a look at the uncommitted protest vote total over 10%. While embattled Senator Bob Menendez attended his bribery trial in New York, voters in the Garden State, they went to the polls to pick his replacement, and Newsmax projects that Congressman Andy Kim will win the Democrat Senate primary. On the Republican side, Trump-backed Christina Serrano Glasner with the lead. Senator Menendez has filed to run as an independent. And Menendez's son, incumbent Congressman Rob Menendez Jr., has the lead in the District 8 primary over the mayor of Hoboken, Ravi Bala. Stick with us, Newsmax, for the primary election results throughout the evening. I'll get that right. I'm John Glasgow. Greg, great stuff there. Good evening. I'm John Glasgow. Newsmax now projecting former President Trump and President Biden as the winners in New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. So in Iowa, incumbent Republican Congresswoman Mariannette Miller Meeks, she's leading right now in House District 1. In New Jersey, as embattled Senator Bob Menendez attended his bribery trial in New York, voters in the Garden State, they went to the polls to pick his replacement. So this comes as Senator Menendez has filed to run as an independent. Newsmax projects that Congressman Andy Kim will win the Democrat Senate primary. On the Republican side, hotel entrepreneur Curtis Bashaw with the lead over Trump-backed Christine Serrano Glasner. And Newsmax projects that Menendez's son, incumbent Congressman Rob Menendez Jr., as the winner in House District 8. So stick with Newsmax for more primary election results throughout the evening. I'm John Glasgow. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Glasgow. Polls now officially closed in Montana. Former President Trump is expected to take Big Sky country this evening. Trump is the projected winner also in New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. Also in Montana, incumbent Democrat Senator Jon Tester is expected to cruise to victory this evening. And on the Republican side, still waiting on results, but Trump-backed Tim Sheehy is expected to take it as well. Sticking with the Senate, in the New Jersey GOP Senate primary to fill that embattled seat for Senator Menendez, well, Newsmax projects that hotel entrepreneur Curtis Bashaw defeats Trump-backed Christine Serrano Glasner. And in Iowa, Republican incumbent Congresswoman Mariannette Miller Meeks with the slight lead in the GOP primary for House District 1. Stick here with Newsmax for more primary election results throughout the evening. I'm John Glasgow.